Hey y'all, it's Candace with Slusher Consulting, home care consulting here in Texas. Today I want to talk about something that a lot of people consider to be a sensitive topic, and that is when someone dies in home care. Somebody who is on home care services and dies in their residence, wherever that might be. Sometimes it's actually in their home, and sometimes it's in a facility. Um, this affects lots of things, and a lot of people don't know what to do. Now, ideally, this client is already on hospice, that they've got a life limiting illness, and that their medical team has recognized this and gotten them the support that they need, started them on hospice, arrangements are made. And then the only thing that needs to be done when the client actually does die is to call the hospice company. They will show up. Their RN will pronounce the client as expired or passed or dead. And then they will proceed to call the funeral home, help to prepare the body and have the body picked up. All this time, of course, allowing hopefully for family to sit in vigil if they have not already. It's a pretty smooth process because everyone has talked about what's to be expected. But sometimes people die unexpectedly. There's lots of different reasons. Could be a fall, an accident, a head injury, a stroke, a heart attack are the most common reasons. Or sometimes there's even a life-limiting illness that was undiagnosed and somebody wasn't aware of what was going on. In those situations, you're going to instruct your staff to call 911. That is the answer. Call emergency services. The emergency services will come out. They will pronounce the client, and they will call the medical examiner. And then depending on the circumstances surrounding the client, the medical examiner's office may require an autopsy, which happens pretty often, again, if it's completely unexpected. Unless the person is just very, very, very old, maybe in the 90s or 100s, then a lot of times they don't really question it. But an autopsy could be normal, and so the family doesn't like that always, but it's part of the deal when it's unexpected, when there's an accident. In either situation, your caregiver would have to make that phone call or call you, and you can make that phone call for them if they're really shaken up, because no telling what kind of situation they find themselves in, and if they weren't prepared for that situation, it can be traumatizing. So you as an agency owner are going to want to make sure that caregiver who was at the client's home either when it happened or found the client dead, you're going to want to make sure that they have adequate support. Perhaps offer counseling, maybe some time off if they need it. Make sure that you're having these conversations with them. Again, it's tough to talk about, but this is the business that we're in. So sometimes you just have to make the hard call and have the hard conversation, but don't ignore it. Don't just let them figure it out on their own, okay? You just make sure that you do support them in whatever way possible. I'd like to talk a little bit more about hospice and end of life. And then I know it's a sensitive topic for a lot of people, but it is a major part of our industry. We take care of people toward the end of their lives, in the December of their lives, if you will, if you're talking seasons. And it is a common occurrence. So when it comes to placing a caregiver with someone who will be dying, they're on hospice, they have a life-limiting illness. In order to be on hospice, the physician has to say that within the reasonable expectation or process of this life-limiting diagnosis that you have, you could be dead within 6 months. That is basically the qualification for Medicare to pay for hospice. And so everyone knows, it's talked about, even if they're relatively high functioning at the beginning, this possibility is there. And so when you are staffing for a hospice situation, for an end of life situation, you've got to have that conversation with your caregivers. Will you be okay if this client dies on your shift? That could happen at any point. It may not happen today, 6 months down the line, even a year sometimes. But are you going to be okay if that happens? And if the caregiver says no, you have to respect that. Once upon a time, long time ago, with best intentions, I pressured, a caregiver to stay with her client. She'd been with this gentleman for 2 years. And, his life was coming to an end. He was on hospice. Only about the last, I guess it was about 2 weeks before he passed that they finally signed him up for hospice. And, she said, I don't know if I can take this. I really love him. I care for him. And it's going to break my heart when he dies. And of course, myself and the scheduling coordinator, had talked to her again, thought we were being gentle, thought we were doing the right thing to say, but you have a connection with this man and he has a connection with you and he trusts you. Wouldn't it be best if you could stay with him during this time? He might be a little scared. He needs your support. And so she agreed to it reluctantly, but not, she didn't argue about it. She just said, well, okay, I guess you're right. So she stayed with them. Sure enough, the gentleman died on her shift. She requested some time off to take a break, and she never went back to home care. I saw her a couple of years later working in retail, and I just felt terrible. I actually sometimes say, don't ever push your caregivers into staying in a hospice situation if they're not comfortable with it, because I broke a caregiver once. That's what I say. I broke her. That's a vulnerable story, but it's a tough lesson to learn. And also, the second thing about placing caregivers in a hospice situation or a situation where we know the client is going to die is that there is a shift in focus. Caregivers, boy, their spirit is all about keeping people alive and healthy, and it's almost job security if we kind of joke about it. But they're like, she got up today, she ate, we went out on a walk, she played bridge with her friends, we had a great day, up, productive, moving, shaken. That's what a good day is for a caregiver and their client. But then when the client's body starts to fail, with no one's fault, a caregiver may take their job a little personally and might feel like they are failing. So again, a hard conversation to have, but you do need to have that conversation. And caregivers need to understand what I call a shift in focus. Okay. So your goal was to keep them mobile and healthy and up and active. And now their body doesn't want that anymore. They're in a different phase of life. And if your caregiver says, well, then this isn't for me, you must respect that. Let them out of the situation. Okay. It is a shift in focus. Hospice, end of life, palliative type care are very different from the regular daily maintenance of trying to keep somebody healthy and active and moving. Okay. So some caregivers can do that. Some can't. Just like some are really great with dementia and some are not. And if they've recognized that, you've got to respect that. Never, ever push your caregivers into a situation where they are not comfortable. That's my advice for today. So hope that this was helpful for any of you. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.